Welcome to the Spiritual Lifestyle Podcast, formerly known as Chapters of Motherhood. I'm your host, Veronica Moss, and I've returned with an evolved vision. I'm currently in studio passionately crafting brand new episodes set to officially debut in the spring of 2024. We now focus on promoting spiritual growth in all areas of life, including career, relationships, and mindful parenting. While you're waiting for the new season to kick off, why not revisit some of the classics? We've got your favorite episodes from Chapters of Motherhood lined up for your enjoyment. So sit back, relax, and let the Spiritual Lifestyle Podcast lead you on a journey of self-discovery and growth. Stay tuned. Welcome to your renewed spiritual sanctuary, the Spiritual Lifestyle Podcast. Welcome back to Chapters of Motherhood Podcast. Today's guest is Dr. Orlena Kerek. She is a pediatric doctor turned health and weight loss coach. She is here to talk about healthy meal planning during stressful times. Welcome, Dr. Orlena.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yes. Can you just give a quick introduction about yourself?
Yes, I can. I am Orlena, and as you can tell from my accent, I'm from the UK. And nearly 9 years ago, I moved to Spain. So in the UK, I was working as a pediatric doctor, and then I moved to Spain. At the time, I had two young kids who were, oh my goodness, two turning 3 and just turned 1. And I thought I was going to work here and be a pediatric doctor here, but it didn't quite work out like that. So I turned to online, and I started off helping picky eaters, children, who had problems with picky eaters, which is really and truly about healthy eating in the background. Because guess what? I had picky eaters myself. And recently I have pivoted and I now help mothers. And partly because one of the best things that we can do as parents is to demonstrate healthy eating and living. And that's one of the best ways to teach our kids. Right. And just as on a side note, I now have 4 children. So I had twins. So I had 4 children under the age of 4.5. My goodness, my hands were full at that time.
Wow, yes. I can only imagine. So here in America, Americans don't have the best diets. We're addicted to fast food, junk food, Coke, soft drinks and candies and ice creams. And, we treat ourselves quite a bit. Not everybody, obviously, but that is the American diet. Right now during this pandemic, a lot of restaurants are closed. A lot of healthy shops are closed. And guess what's open? All the fast foods, all the drive-thrus, all those food places are open. So right now we're experiencing a lot of picky eating, and it's a lot of stress eating. It's a lot of comfort foods. And I mean, we're really forgetting, I guess I can only speak for myself right now, but we really are forgetting that we should be eating more healthy. And I don't know what to do with my kids because I have one that's super picky, and she won't eat healthy options. Okay.
So I think there's lots of things to think about. And the first thing that I like to say to parents is, healthy eating is something that we need to teach our children. That healthy eating is not something that children automatically have. It's a bit like teaching them to ride a bicycle in that they need a little bit of help. It's not something that, like walking. All children learn to walk. You can leave your child and they will just do it by themselves. And the same isn't true of healthy eating. And there are many reasons for this. But one of the reasons is that as humans, one of our fundamental drives is to seek sugar. And, we can see this in everything. So if you ask a child what they want to eat, they're going to say something high in sugar. Or, for me, I ask my kids what they want and they always say spaghetti bolognese. But spaghetti bolognese is one of those things that really gives you a quick release of sugar. It gets broken down into our body as sugar. What children don't say is, I would love a plate of a crunchy salad or cabbage or kale or something like that. And I think we have to be realistic and understand that that is just normal. That is just children. And as parents, our job is to teach children to eat healthily so that when they leave home, they are eating healthily and choosing healthy options. So we don't necessarily need to stress about right now. Having said that, it is important what we eat now, particularly if it's repeated behavior. So these are stressful times. They are stressful times for everybody, and it is perfectly normal to be stressed and to have anxiety. But as parents, we want to learn how to cope with that stress and anxiety in a way that isn't eating and isn't demonstrating to our children, hey, this is how you deal with stress and anxiety. Right. And the real issue with teaching your children healthy eating is that essentially you need to take a step back. It's not any one meal that is the problem. And you need to take a step back and look at everything that your child is eating. And this is the same of adults. It doesn't matter what you eat one day. One day you can, it can be Christmas Day. We all have a big, huge, great feast on Christmas Day. And that's perfectly fine. But the big important thing is what we eat all the time. Does that make sense?
Yes. And there's a lot of bored eating. I know I'm guilty of it. I do a lot of bored eating. And so the kids eating just out of boredom.
Yeah, well, I think one cure for that is really to be quite strict on the times that you have for eating. So the way I teach parents to feed younger children. So younger children, if you've got, toddlers, then they actually need to eat more frequently than adults do. And you can see that when we have a baby, when they're very, very little, they're eating, depending on the size of the baby, every 2 hours. And, as they get older, they space that out to every 3 or 4 hours. And it's the same with young children. They need to have small amounts of food more frequently. However, that sometimes sort of sticks around and people end up snacking quite a lot when they don't really need to snack. So it does depend on your day and, what time you get up. But I would say you want to have a routine, you want to have eating times, and it doesn't have to be an exact time, but, you have breakfast in the morning, and then you may have a snack, and then you may have lunch, and then afternoon snack is optional. We often don't have afternoon snack, dinner, and then ideally you don't want to do any eating after dinner. And when I talk about snacks, I'm not talking about something that comes out of a packet. Ideally, a piece of fruit. It depends on the number of hours between your eating, but you really want to be seeing snacks as a mini meal where you're thinking about all of the food groups. So, you can even have vegetables as snacks, something like hummus and carrot sticks, and really move away from this idea of a snack is something that comes in a bag and full of sugar.
And I think that's where a lot of us do fail, because we think, okay, let's go get snacks. We go to Costco and we get like those goldfish in a packet and the mini muffins. And it's full of like easy to open snacks for the kids for them to do it themselves. But I have found that if I just leave the bananas accessible to them, they will also snack on the bananas, and they'll also snack on like carrots. You could also buy carrot packaged, and they can get that as well.
Yes, absolutely. And, I hear a lot of people say, oh my goodness, my child won't eat this and they won't eat that. And the truth is, again, it's about taking this step back and looking at what your child is eating all the time. If your child is being allowed to snack on, these high calorie snacks all day, and then you come to dinner time and expect your child to eat some broccoli, of course they aren't going to eat broccoli. And equally, if you allow your child to have free reign of those, so, even if they have just one snack a day, one unhealthy snack a day, shall we say, and you say, well, you can eat the entire packet of cookies, children know they're clever. They will save themselves up for that, and they can get all their calories that they need in that one snack if that's the way it's done. So it's about getting a balance right and thinking about limiting the not such desirable foods in a way that it doesn't become super, super desirable. Because if you say you are never, ever, ever allowed to eat all these beautiful treats and sweets that we want to eat, then those become the desirable things, the things that they're always wanting to get. So, it's about getting the balance. And what I would say, the limit that I allow my children is we're allowed one thing a day, which is sweet. So something like, I would call them biscuits, but you would probably call them a cookie. Right. So they're allowed one of those a day. And, then we might, on top of that, during certain periods, my children don't tend to have what we call sweets, what you call candy, all the time. But there are obviously times of years when this happens. So when it's Easter, for example, there's extra chocolate around, and they can have that once a week. So an extra sweet once a week, and thinking about those limits. But going one step further, I find that my children love to have carbohydrates. They love bread, they love pasta, they love anything like that. And I also limit the amount that they can have of that as well. Because if I say to them at lunchtime, well, you can eat as much of that as you want, they will eat all of the bread and none of the vegetables. So the way to do it is to allow them free range of all of those healthy things. They can eat as many fruit and vegetables as they like. And children learn to like fruit and vegetables. It's not that, well, let me say, picky eating is a scale. Some children are very picky and some children less picky. But the vast majority of children have some fruit and vegetables that are acceptable to them. And most children who are closer to the very, very picky end, it's not normally about the actual fruit and vegetables. Often it is about the way they think about the fruit and vegetables. But the bottom line is that they will have things that they will eat. So one of my sons is very picky, and he has learned to eat healthy foods. If you just give your children healthy foods, then they will eat healthy foods. So he will eat green broccoli. He loves green apples. He won't touch red apples. But, that gives me enough variety to be able to give him a variety of things that he eats during the day and not just eat bread the whole time. So free reign of fruit and vegetables and limiting the bread in a way, or the carbohydrate in a way that it's just like, this is the portion, this is the amount that you're allowed to have. You can have one portion of this, and then you can have lots of fruit and vegetables. And another big key for children as well is variety, that the more variety they have, the more they get used to variety. So lots of children are scared of trying new foods. And the more they get used to those new foods, then the more acceptable they are. It's like they have a list in their head. This is on the acceptable list. This is not on the acceptable list. And they've made their mind up before they've even seen the food, whether it's acceptable or not, just based on what they think about it.
Okay. Yeah, I never thought about limiting breads. And that's what my kids eat all day long. Butter bread, peanut butter bread, Nutella bread, and they want to eat bread all day long, pretzels and things like that. I never even thought that I should be limiting their bread because, it'll turn into sugars, right?
Yes, exactly. And I think this is something that is a big misconception in the world. A lot of people think, well, bread is savory, so therefore it's healthy. But the honest truth is that all carbohydrates, particularly our refined carbohydrates, so within refined carbohydrates, I could include things like bread and pasta, things that really spike our glucose levels, quite quickly as we eat them. And things like breakfast cereal. Even if you have a breakfast cereal that doesn't have sugar added to it, and the vast majority of them do have sugar added to them, then once you've eaten them, they actually turn to sugar within our bodies. And we want to be getting our carbohydrates from vegetables, from fruit and vegetables. So fruit and vegetables, most of them have quite a lot of carbohydrates in them, but they're wrapped up in all the goodness and the fiber and all the other vitamins and nutrients that are within that. And they're not released as quickly in our bodies, so they don't spike our insulin levels. Now, depending on where you are with how your children eat, it may not matter so much. If you have a child who isn't overweight and they're energetic and they're not overeating, then they have the capacity to be able to eat more carbohydrates. But the truth is, as you increase the amount of carbohydrates, you're training your child to eat carbohydrates in the future. And we are also seeing childhood obesity now and high levels of, not just obesity, but actually, disease because of childhood obesity, things like childhood diabetes. So secondary type 2 diabetes, which previously we would only see in adults, we're now seeing in children who are overweight because they're eating too many carbohydrates.
So I recently started trying to do juicing, and for me, I've always liked juicing and green smoothies and things like that. And only one of my daughters really, I have 3 little ones at home, and my 5-year-old is the one that really likes the juicing and the green smoothies. But the other 2, the 3-year-old and the 9-year-old, yuck. They're like, yuck, I don't want that. So I was just going to ask your opinion about juicing and green smoothies. Is that, a good way to steer them into healthier options rather than just, your plain apple juice?
Well, okay, so there's 2 things I'd like to say. The first thing I would like to say is I think fabulous thing that you're doing is getting your children in the kitchen. And, as you talked about this right at the beginning and saying, this is how the American people eat. Well, actually, right now, I think we have this amazing opportunity because we are all stuck in home and we can start cooking in the kitchen and we can start getting our kids in the kitchen. And one really good way of teaching your children about foods is to cook with them. And ideally, you want to be cooking healthy vegetables. But you know what? A lot of kids like to cook sweets and cakes. But actually, you know what? If you start cooking those sweets and cakes and seeing how much sugar goes into those sweets and cakes and flour, if you think about flour and sugar as the same thing, essentially, they are the same thing. And you look at them and think, oh my goodness, this has got so much flour and sugar in them. It will make you think next time you go and buy those products. So, that's one really good thing. Now, here's the hard truth about fruit juice. And the reality about fruit juice is it's not as healthy as a lot of people think. It's essentially taking something like an orange and taking away the good bits and being left with the sugar. So fruit juice is actually very high in sugar and you're throwing away all the fiber. So I much prefer it if children eat an orange. Okay. However, it depends where you are. If you think that, my child is more likely to accept some orange juice than, say, a fizzy drink, then that's a step towards the right direction. But I would say you want to have that as a treat, that you have a small glass of orange juice once a day rather than something that you're drinking all the time. Children should be, and adults should be drinking mostly water. Right. So, smoothies can work very well for some people. Some people love smoothies and, you can add extra fiber like kale and things like that. And it can be a good way of getting those nutrients and vitamins into people. But the best way is to eat those vegetables whole. That's my opinion. And not everybody agrees. But as you whiz something up, the more that you process it outside of your body, the less work your body has to do to get to those nutrients. So here's another example. If you think about a whole almond and the amount of work that we used to have to do in the past to get the energy in that almond, we would have to go and pick it from the tree and then crack it open. And then if we wanted to make a cake from it, turn it into almond flour. Whereas now we just go and buy almond flour. That is, if we're not just going to buy the cake. And so a lot of that work has already been done for us. And it's almost been broken down for us, and we don't have to do that. We don't have to do the chewing because it's already in flour. And so that means that when we eat it, it is going to push our sugar levels up more quickly than if we had to chew it. And that's when, when we start chewing, that starts the digestive process. We start releasing enzymes in our mouth. But if you don't have to, if you just drink the orange juice, then it just goes straight into our stomach. That sugar goes straight into our stomach. Does that make sense?
Yes, I get it.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. It does. And that's the one thing that I did think about juicing versus the green smoothies is you are taking away all the fiber, but I'm just trying to get them to try something different, something new.
One really good way, well, there's two really good ways. One really good way is something called food pairing. So you take something, tell me is there something like common that your children like cheese or bacon or meat?
Well, they really do like a lot of bread. So they a lot of like Nutella bread or waffles. I get the frozen chicken nuggets, try to get them to eat that. They actually do like salad. So if I make a salad, they'll eat it. And it's just a hit and miss with vegetables sometimes. Sometimes they like the carrots, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they want to eat just the top of the broccoli and throw away the stem. And then other times they just want to eat cheese all day long.
Okay, so I think that's absolutely fine in terms of, they're curious and they want to try a little bit of the broccoli. One other big piece of advice I have is really don't push your children to eat things because when you do that, it does depend on your child and knowing your child, but what you really want to avoid is a battle of wills. So, when you say you have to eat this and they say no, and then you end up battling someone at the dinner table. And if you have genuinely picky eating, or rather children who are, more severely picky, then it's just going to create a huge, great issue. So you want to not push them into eating. And what you want to be doing is serving them vegetables all the time. So if you take this step back and had a magic wand and could change the way you feed your children and breakfast, lunch and dinner, you're serving them, healthy options as well, and knowing that they aren't eating lots of bread, then by the time you come to dinner, you're not worried that they haven't eaten that piece of broccoli, because they've eaten some hummus with carrot sticks for lunch, or they've had an apple at breakfast time. So it takes the pressure off any particular vegetable, so that when you say, here you go, you can eat the vegetables, you can try the vegetables, and they may have a piece of carrot and a pea, you're not too worried about that. I think finding the balance here is, it depends on your family. Like, every family is different and each child is different. So it kind of depends on your family and your child's dynamics to get that exactly right.
Okay.
But so the other thing I was going to talk about was food pairing. So food pairing is when you take something that your children like. So it could be something like ketchup or cheese or bacon, and then you present it with something else. So they did this experiment where they got children to eat celery, and they presented it with celery and cream cheese. And the children who liked the cream cheese were more likely to have the two items together. And it's a really useful thing to be able to think about. So, for example, my children all love meat. They are carnivores, and we don't actually eat very much meat. But yesterday I made an Italian sausage casserole. So it had some sausage in it, and it had loads and loads of vegetables, and it had like a tomato sauce, and my children like a tomatoey sauce. So they ate all of it. The vegetables weren't hidden in that I hadn't, they were chopped up. They could see them. But because it was in this nice sausagey, tomatoey sauce, they just ate them without really thinking about them, if that makes sense. If it hadn't been in that sauce, I know that they would have picked out some of those vegetables. They would have gone, oh, I don't like this green thing.
Right.
And, I allow my children to not eat those vegetables that they really don't like. But then when I prepare foods, I think about each of my child and make sure there is a vegetable that they can eat. And if that is just carrot sticks, I'm perfectly happy with that. If I do a couple of carrot sticks on the side and know that one of my children will just eat the carrot sticks as their vegetable, then that's perfectly fine.
All right. Yeah, that makes sense. Pairing foods together. I know that there's a real good one where if your child likes peanut butter, you can chop up an apple and spread peanut butter on the apple, or do that. I think they call it ants on a log, where you do the celery with peanut butter and some raisins, right?
Yes, exactly. Those kind of things. So just take what your child likes and add it to something else. So they like cheese, then put cheese on the broccoli, and just, think about that. The other way you can do it as well is they call it food chaining. And it's if you've got a particularly picky eater, so whatever they like. So with your children like breadstuffs. So, you would want to do lots of different variety of bread stuff. So my children are very keen on their breads, but instead of giving them bread every single day at lunchtime, so we might have bread once a week at lunchtime, but then I'll give them something different, like, well, we call them Ryvitas. My husband calls them sawdust biscuits. They're just different kind of crackers. So there's lots of different kind of crackers, but other bread products, and they can have a little bit of that. And I know that they will always eat that bread product. Mm-hmm. But then you can try and work outwards. So, for example, if your child likes strawberries, red fruit, they might then like raspberries as well, because they're kind of similar. Whereas if you go for something totally different, it's too far away. So if they like green broccoli, you might want to try something green like peas. Does that make sense? So you're thinking about similar things. And, I think when you're thinking about picky children, you want to think about colour and texture and flavour and all of the things together, because quite often it's not what we would assume it to be. So, for example, children think of chopped carrots in coins and grated carrots and cooked carrots. They're all different things to a child. To us, they're all the same thing. They're all carrot. But to a child, they're all slightly different.
Right. Okay. I didn't even think of that. That's a great idea. Okay. What about right now where physical activity is a little bit hard to do right now? Our hiking trails, actually, they just opened it, but for weeks, the hiking trails were closed down. The beaches are still closed down. We can walk around our neighborhood, but we have to wear a mask. What about physical activity? I've tried to get them to do like kid yoga at home, but they're not as enthusiastic about it as I would want them to be, but they do love going for walks. What more can we do to get them more physically active?
Yeah, I think it's really, really difficult at the moment. Right now, we aren't allowed outside at all. But very excitingly, on Sunday, we will be allowed out for an hour a day. And I'm so looking forward to it. So
Oh
it
my
is
goodness.
really difficult. And I think if you have a garden, and the weather's nice, it's so much easier because then you can do things like play games. My children will just naturally go and kick a football round. And, sometimes I have to say to them, particularly once they've been watching television or having screen time, right, you have to go outside and play outside for 10, 15 minutes. And once they start, they're perfectly fine and they'll play for longer. But sometimes they just need that little push. And I think it's about thinking about looking at their day and our own day as well, making sure that they're getting some movement. So I think it doesn't have to be, respiratory breathing all the time. Just walking up and down the stairs and around the house for a lot of the day is fine. And actually, I've been using it's not a Fitbit, but, something that measures my steps. And it's really interesting now that I can measure my days and think, oh, I've had a reasonable day. I've walked around, or, oh my goodness, I actually haven't walked around. So then I can go and do a few laps of the garden. With kids, I think the secret is, finding something that they really like and finding it fun. And I think, well, to be honest, it's a secret for adults too. We don't do things that we don't like, but we do have to work it into a routine. And so I think if you have a particular thing that you're going to do and find a time that works for you within your day and stick to it. So, for example, we have been in the UK, there's a YouTube channel called PE with Joe Wicks, and he does a half-hour. It's essentially a HIIT workout. And, it's for everybody really, but particularly aimed at children. And we have been doing it at 10 o'clock in the morning. And I've decided that this really it just takes up our whole morning and it's not a great time to do it. So I'm going to move it to right before lunchtime. But the point is that you have a time where everybody knows this is, at 12 o'clock, we all stop everything we're doing and we go and do half an hour of exercise. So it's either Joe Wicks or, make something fun like Zumba or a 7-minute workout. But at 12 o'clock, we all do this and then we have lunch after that. But so I think the secrets are making it fun, finding something that works for you and just having a time that is within your routine that you do it every single, I would say Monday to Friday and then have the weekends off.
Okay. And then for toddlers, I find that it's very easy just to turn on like one of those ABC YouTube preschool videos on YouTube and just like dance with them. And they'll dance along, like they'll get silly. And it's just getting the wiggles out. And it doesn't take, they don't have to be on an Olympic schedule on how to exercise. It could just be getting those wiggles out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, toddlers don't normally need to exercise. Toddlers sort of have an on-off, don't they? They're either running around or they're fast asleep. So I wouldn't worry about toddlers, but yeah, making it fun and dancing. And that's another good, exciting thing that you can do is have a family disco night on Friday evening or something like that, and just make it fun with you and everybody together.
Yeah. Now, one other thing that I'm finding is, and no judgment at all to the moms, but a lot of moms are saying, okay, it's wine o'clock time. It's 9 a.m. It's, all the days are bleeding into each other. So who cares what time we start drinking our wine? Mommy needs her wine to cope and to deal. I'm finding that a lot of people are using alcohol because alcohol is available right now. And I'm in California. Also, all the weed shops, all the dispensaries are open as well. So I'm finding that a lot of people are consuming alcohol and consuming marijuana a lot. What can we do to scale that back? Like, do we have any advice on that?
Well, I think there's, several things that you need to think about. And I think with anything that we do, if we're using it as a coping mechanism, then that's not great. It doesn't matter whether it's food or alcohol or anything. If your coping mechanism is to turn to something, then you're going to run into problems. And really and truly what you want to be doing is thinking about other ways of sorting that out. So, things like exercise. Exercise can be a really good stress relief. And, one of the things I found really, really beneficial, particularly right at the beginning, but even now, is meditation and having a bit of time for my mind, just, really to calm your emotions down, because this is an emotional time for everybody, whether it's emotions about worrying about the state of the world or emotions because you're locked up in a house with 4 children who also have big emotions. So, I think one of the things is be kind to yourself and recognize that we aren't perfect. This is a difficult time for everybody and you have to look after yourself. But turning to either food or alcohol is not the right answer. Having said that, I don't think it's necessarily bad to have a glass of wine or alcohol if you're sticking to the limit, if you're having a glass or a little bit, and I think instead of using it as a coping mechanism, then use it as a celebration of life. And I don't mean that as an invitation to go and drink lots and lots. But what I mean is we get so used to eating and drinking without really thinking about it. And actually, if you can be really present when you're doing whatever that eating and drinking is, and go, this is what I'm really enjoying right now in this moment, and really taking on what you're doing and thinking about it, then it's a kind of different thing from, oh my goodness, I'm drowning out this emotion that I just can't deal with. Does that make sense?
Yes, that is, I guess that's not really like my concern, but not alcohol anyway. But my concern was, I do that with eating. It's like, oh, let's go get some ice cream because I'm stressed out. And I can see how that can also, for another person, could be alcohol or could be weed or could be, some other substance.
Yeah. And I would say, okay, so think about it as two separate things. You need to work out how to deal with your stress and think about putting in tools to deal with your stress. And that can look differently for different people. Making sure you have enough sleep is the other big one. So really, it's about mindfulness and how you deal with that. Exercise and sleep. Those are the three big pillars, as well as nutrition, obviously. So thinking about how you're going to manage your stress. But then I invite you to say, do you know what? If you want to eat ice cream, go and eat ice cream. But go and eat ice cream and really enjoy the ice cream and enjoy a reasonable portion, not a big, big portion, but enjoy it and go, do you know what? I'm here with my family right now. Look, the sky is blue. It's not raining. It's been raining here for the last 3 days. And I tell you, it's so much more difficult being locked inside when it's raining than when it's sunny. And really enjoy that moment that you have right now. And I think that's just a slightly different way of doing it. And also when you do it like that, I think you'll find that you won't be tempted to do it so frequently.
Yeah, that's good. So during this time, how can we meal plan mindfully with healthy choices?
Well, I guess there's different ways of doing it. Now, my way is to go to the market and buy lots and lots of vegetables and come back and cook them. And, I plan during the week. That doesn't work for a lot of people. And it's not actually the way that I advise people if they are getting used to healthy eating. And I guess what I would say about healthy eating is, in a nutshell, you want to be eating lots of vegetables and you want to be reducing processed and packaged foods and moving away from refined carbohydrates to vegetables as carbohydrates. And, thinking about things like nuts and seeds and healthy oils and, obviously protein in there. So the way that most people need to start doing it is to think and have a plan. And, it depends how structured you like to be. One way that people do it is they sit down on Sunday or whatever day of the week and they plan for a whole week, so that when you get to that day, you know exactly what you're going to be cooking and exactly what you're going to be offering and exactly what you're going to be eating. Now, a week is a good way to do it. But if you can just do a day ahead, that works as well. So if you can say, okay, tomorrow, this is what we're going to have for breakfast, lunch and dinner. The problem arises when you haven't thought about it. And suddenly, oh my goodness, you have to provide food for however many starving people. And you haven't got any plan and you're hungry and perhaps emotional. And then that's when everything sort of goes wrong.
Right.
And, particularly if you're an emotional eater, because then you will be saying, oh, actually, I don't want this healthy thing. Let's go for this easy, not so nutritious option. So I think the secret really is to leave space between planning and eating. And it doesn't really matter how much space you leave, ideally a week, if that works for you. But if you can just do it for one day ahead, then that's much better than deciding on the hoof what you're going to eat.
Right. Because I relate to that. If I don't have a meal in my plans for the next day will come. I'm like, oh, the chicken didn't defrost. Let's just go get some drive-through. And I'm so guilty of that. I know. I need to control myself. I need to make plans.
Yeah, but if on the other hand, you could say, okay, we're going to have drive-through on Friday night, and then I've got a plan for all the other days, and then you've got the food ready, and you think, well, this food is either going to go to waste, and you can see the food there, then you're more likely to cook it and eat it than say, okay, but now I'm going to waste all this food and go for drive-through.
Can we talk about your Pinterest, Snotty Noses? What is that about?
Oh, okay. So yes, this is that was my healthy eating. So when I very first started, and this was back when I was actually working as a doctor, and I wrote about younger children, so children under the age of 1, and what they often got unwell with, which is fevers and vomiting and diarrhea. So I basically thought about all the things that I see so frequently as a pediatric doctor and respiratory illnesses, and I wrote it up and I put it on as just pages. And I decided to call it Snotty Noses because back in those days, I had no idea about anything online and didn't really realize that if you call something Snotty Noses, nobody has any idea what it's about. But so as it evolved over the years, it was really where I put all my healthy eating for children, tactics on how to help your children eat healthily. And I actually started another website as well called Happy Healthy Eating for Children. And then finally, I started Dr. Orlena website. So I would like to say that, oh my goodness, it was all very well thought out. But the reality was it wasn't very well thought out at all. And so I ended up with 3 sites, which isn't great, but they're there now. And I don't really have time to change them.
Well, I mean, it worked out. I was looking through them and I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. Yeah, it starts off with, healthy eating. I just thought that maybe it was like something like, oh, Snotty Noses, how to reel the kids back in and feed them so that they don't get sick is what I thought.
Yes, but actually, it had quite a lot of, it does have quite a lot of health articles on it. And really, the reason I called it Snotty Noses is because children all have snotty noses. And actually, the vast majority of children have snotty noses, and it's normal. And that was kind of what I was trying to say, is that children, they get colds and they get coughs. They get like 10 colds, little ones. And it's part of their immune system is learning to understand, to fight these things. Obviously not now in the times of COVID, but, we want our children to be exposed to these bugs so that their immune systems can learn. And as they learn, they have snotty noses because they're getting viruses. And that was really the idea behind it, was our children always have snotty noses, but actually that's perfectly fine. Having a snotty nose isn't normally a sign that there's anything particularly wrong with your child.
Right. Okay. Do you want to talk about your Fit and Fabulous Facebook group or page?
Yeah, I would love to. Thank you for asking. So Fit and Fabulous is my podcast, and it's called Fit and Fabulous at 40 and Beyond. And I talk about how to, like, the 4 pillars, really. So thinking about mindset and nutrition, and, well, there's not heaps that you can say about sleep and exercise, but really the why we want to do these things. So, healthy eating starts in childhood, but as adults, if we lead a healthy lifestyle, then really we avoid so many illnesses, so many things like heart disease and diabetes, and we can reduce our risk of cancer significantly. And that's really my big message in life, is that healthy eating and living is amazing, and we can feel fit and fabulous and lead amazing lives. And that's essentially what I talk about in my podcast. And I have a Facebook group for people who, want to connect a little bit more. And we have monthly challenges. So this month it is vegetables and olive oil month.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, I'll definitely link everything up in the show notes to make sure that I don't miss anything, or to make sure that the listeners can get in contact with you and also listen to your podcast and connect with you with your social media.
Fabulous. Thank you. And you're more than welcome to come and join the Facebook group. And if you want more advice and more, because it's so much to take in all at once, isn't it? When you hear all of this, the reality is a lot of people understand what they should be doing, but the difficulty is in actually doing it and actually applying it to your life. And quite often, it's just something really easy that takes you one step closer to where you want to get. But sometimes it can be difficult for you to see that yourself. And you just need somebody to say, do you know what? Eat an apple a day. And that's closer to healthy eating than where you are now, or, whatever it is for you. But yeah, I'd love to have you in the group.
Oh, yeah, I'll definitely join for sure. Well, thank you so much. Is there anything else that you any other topic that you wanted to touch on?
No, I think just healthy eating and living is a marathon. And it's not something that you say, okay, I'm going to start, and this week and next week it's all going to be amazing and I've nailed it. It's something that we all keep working on. It doesn't matter where you are in your journey. There's always some little small thing that you can improve. And, it's a fun and enjoyable journey, and that we should be enjoying it. And the benefits are amazing.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Dr. Orlena. I definitely do want to link everything up so that my listeners can also hook up with you as well. And I really did enjoy it. I know it can be intimidating. Personally, for me, there's so many options to start and it's intimidating. But, the advice of start, even with an apple a day and, cut out the bread. I mean, that's great advice just to start.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.